ahead and get started tonight. So tonight we have the Borough Council workshop meeting for August 30th, 2023, and September workshop meeting with our agenda. Can I get a call to order?
President Ferguson,
Here.
Vice President Gerard,
Here.
Councilmember Fagan,
Here.
Councilmember Cresser, here, Councilmember Stevens,
Here.
Mayor Gerard,
Here.
Borough Manager Snyder, here, Borough Solicitor Harper, here.
All right, we'll start with item 1. Can I get approval of the meeting agenda? So moved.
Second.
I got a motion from Councilman Stevens, second from Councilman Cresser. Any questions, changes, or amendments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. All right, we'll go to item 2, public input. If anyone from the public would like to make a statement or ask some questions, I would just ask you to please rise, state your name and the reason for addressing council. All right. Since there is none, we'll go to item 3, junior council person introduction and pledge.
Okay, I'll take over, Peter. I am pleased to announce we have a candidate for junior council person. He's in the audience there. His name is Aiden Weeder. If you could stand up, Aiden. And you want to come on out? That's fine. Okay. Included in your packet was Aiden's letter to me concerning why he wanted to become a junior council person. I hope everybody had the opportunity to look at that letter, and Aiden's here if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, or anything. Aiden, I'm sure, will be happy to answer anything at this time.
Well, Aiden, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested? For those who don't have the letter.
Sorry, I don't have the best hearing. Say it loud.
Oh, sorry. I said, would you like to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, sorry. Hi, I'm Aiden Weeder. I'm a senior at North Penn High School. I live in Hatfield. And I've been in the community for a while. And my mom's been working here for a while, so I think I have a deeper connection with the borough than most people. I am the leader of the North Penn Christian Club, so I try to take the leadership roles the best I can. And I received an award from Bob Mensch, the senator, for my outstanding school. I have to. Well, as you can see, I kind of laugh sometimes, but I like to learn, and now you learn it. And I'm greatly appreciated to be allowed here and to speak in front of y'all, you all. And sorry for any mishaps.
No worries. It happens to us all. So. Yeah.
Anybody? Any other questions? Any other comments or that?
I do have a question for you, Aiden. In doing this project, becoming part of the Borough Council, what are your goals to get out of this?
Well, as I said, I like to learn, and I try my best to pay attention to new things. And I was always, at a young age, I was into politics and government, and you know, heads of power, if you will. And I value that. I think it's important to this nation, but the globe as a whole. So when I come to things like this, I just like to learn, grow, and hopefully when I'm older, I can do the same thing and use what I've learned to achieve greater experience in other things as well, in government and outside of government.
Thank you.
Yeah, swearman.
Mayor,
Mayor.
I will, have Eden take the pledge then, and he will officially be, junior council person, so.
Go ahead.
There's no. Okay, let's just step out here. Eden and Lindsay, we'll ask. You need a photographer. Third, we have to, send this to PSA.
Yes, they're in the right, let's have the light.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you wanna?
Now, if you could raise the right hand, please. And just repeat after me. I, Eden Peter,
I, Aiden Weider,
do solemnly pledge
do solemnly pledge
that I accept the position
that I accept the position
of Hatfield Borough Junior Council person.
as Hatfield Borough Junior Council person.
I promise to attend monthly council meetings,
I promise to attend monthly council meetings,
observe borough council meeting rules,
observe borough council meeting rules,
and actively participate in borough business.
and actively participate in borough business.
I understand that I cannot vote on any issue,
I understand I cannot vote on any issue,
and I cannot end executive sessions.
and I cannot attend executive sessions.
Well, congratulations.
Debbie. Debbie.
Oh, I'm late.
Lindsay?
That's me.
Who's having a rough night?
I was a baby, he wants picture with me.
With your mom.
No, no,
And I thought I was punching you by asleep, so.
Oh, yeah.
You're the star of the show.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Congratulations, lady.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Welcome aboard.
All right, see you later.
All right, that's a first, and I'm glad to see that. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, we'll go on to item 4, the Volunteer Medical Services Corps Emergency Medical Services presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I can slide over.
Might want to make sure that microphone's on. I don't know if it was on for 8.
The green.
How about now?
There you go. Yep, should have a green light.
Thank you all for allowing us to present this honorable mayor and council. My name is Shane Wheeler, and I'm the executive officer at the MSD Invest. And wanted to kind of come and kind of benchmark the hallmark of where we've been working for about a year now with the municipal managers and trying to identify a path forward to create a more sustainable EMS system for the municipalities that we serve. I've got my colleague Bryson over there, and Neil, that kind of helped me through there. At the Hatfield Township, I forgot to click all the buttons, so I just talked the entire time. I looked at the slides. Got redundancy in here now. So you all should have a packet. I'm just gonna kind of go over there. I won't take a lot of your time, but I want to kind of talk about the state of EMS with regards to what's happening on our Commonwealth and our region and across the country right now. EMS by its design has gone through a couple generations, and it's about 60 year history of inception. Kind of founded under the Johnson administration and sure and presented under the subsequent Ford and Nixon administrations. EMS was essentially a federally funded kind of program that cascaded funds through the state and then passed it out to local municipalities. Insurance was part of it, but was not the main drive for what the EMS system was supposed to be funded by. It was supposed to be funded by governments. Under the Reagan administration, Balanced Budget Act, he thought it should be the government needed the less hands-on approach with EMS, and all that federal funding dried up. which forced EMS systems to kind of solely focus on reimbursement from transportation through insurance and third-party payers and so forth. Every day. Unfortunately, the reimbursement has not kept pace from the insurance carriers with the cost of delivering services. It's nothing new to EMS. We've been struggling as an industry for about 15 years now. We can go back and find articles in papers and news clippings about systems not being able to meet funding requirements. Volunteerism essentially has dried up in most of the areas with regards to EMS, simply because of the demand, the training demands. To be a paramedic, it's about 1,500 hours to do that, about $10,000 pull that off. So volunteerism in a whole, we're seeing this in the fire service and other areas. This is kind of falling off, right? So it fell off for VMSC. They started hiring crews in the 80s. I've progressed. Volunteers have continued to drop, and today we have very few volunteers. We have maybe a handful of folks that come in and help us with events, football games, etc. Kind of help us do that. As far as manning the ambulances, we just don't have that. The organization, under the careful guidance of the municipal managers, reorganized and restructured itself in 2021 and created the position that I now hold for a career chief executive to steer the ship. Before that, it was being ran by a volunteer manager with a career staff that is also a union staff. So we're one of the few organized labor EMS systems in the region. So anyway, here I am, right? We looked deep into the organization. We realized we had about $3 million in funds that were in a rainy day fund in the organization. And when I arrived, we had one ambulance to service 110 or 120,000 people. We weren't responding to about 49% of the calls. We're leaving $1.6 million in revenue from those calls that we weren't covering on the table. Just weren't getting that. Our staffing level was at 45%. And our response times are averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of about 16 minutes for each of the names. So the board authorized me to make some pretty drastic and sweeping changes within the organization, focusing primarily on employee sustainability, community services, increased coverage, etc. So I'm happy to report that we have dropped that response time. As I'm sure you see our monthly reports, to less than 8 minutes. We clinically outpace the rest of the Commonwealth and the nation in some important clinical measures. I'm refocusing our training and educational priorities and partnerships with Jefferson Health, Einstein, disaster and EMS fellowship programs for medical direction. And we've invested hundreds of hours in training to get to these measures. We went from 1 truck on average on duty a day to 6 trucks on duty. Our call turnover is less than 1%. And I'm happy to report that we consistently stay about 97% staffed full-time people. We have a 3% attrition rate, which is outstanding for our industry. Our paramedics and EMTs stay here. They're happy. We finally kind of location where everybody are thriving in their wages. We've adjusted our benefits accordingly so that they have good benefits. We're no longer really competing with other ambulance services for personnel. We're competing with municipalities. The people that we have left are going to be state police officers or Philadelphia firefighters, etc. But the market is adjusting, and we've recently seen a considerable uptake by our other ambulance services offering, $10,000 sign-on bonuses or $30,000 sign-on bonuses in Philadelphia to try to attract people and raising their rates and so forth. So we expected that market to adjust. So in order for us to get a full understanding of what we do, we realize that on emergency services, emergency ambulance responses, we cover about 86% of the cost to do this, to do those runs. So we have a 14% gap in funding. And that's for a lot of reasons. One, we're basically held hostage by insurance carriers. If they want to pay what they want to pay, right? Oftentimes the beneficiary is paying it directly, which results in us having to go after the people that receive the check for the service and you don't want to give us the money. And I understand, and cost of living is high, and suddenly you get a $800 or $1,000 check for an ambulance. You think, well, I'll make $5 a month payment. That's resulted in over $10 million in lost revenue for our organization over the last 12 years. $10 million. We routinely Medicaid, for example, hopefully the legislature approves and passes a $20 million fund that will improve the mileage reimbursement. Currently, we don't get paid any Medicaid mileage on an ambulance transport under 20 miles. And as you know, we have hospitals that are well below 20 miles that we transport to. But that reimbursement rate is at $4 a mile, which is half of what Medicare pays. For our impact, it's going to be about $45,000 additional funding for our organization, which is about 0.05% of our budget. So the impact on our organization is very low. So we try to make up that gap, that 14% gap, by other programs, capital giving campaigns, subscription plans, right, which have become more and more popular with seniors, but still only about 4% of our total population actually participate in those programs. We've been excluded by many of the Medicare Advantage / supplemental plans that are attractive for seniors to do because they get, different services for those. But what's not included is ambulance service. So there'll be a $250 copay assigned to some of those plans. So if you're a senior and then you signed up for this program, right, then you get a bill in the mail for $250 for your contribution and copay for your ambulance. The subscription program eliminates that because it allows us to basically accept what that insurance carrier pays. So it does provide a financial relief service for that subscription service. And then of course, we do a lot of other things and try to offset. We've done everything from coin jars and gas stations to various businesses that'll hold, like margaritas will donate a percentage of funds to help us with our employee wellness programs and stuff to keep our employees healthy and safe. So we've been meeting with managers and we came up with an initial formula and what do you want to put up there? Put up the research. So we conducted, you may have gotten a phone call, you may not. We got a phone list of approximately 25,000 names in the North Bend area and hired 2 companies to conduct a anonymous independent poll. And we asked them these 3 questions. The first question, do you believe your emergency ambulance service, let me go down, we got about it here. Do you believe your emergency ambulance service is currently tax funded? 37% answered they thought it was, right? So many people already think that their taxes are going to support the EMS, right? And the big one there, would you support your emergency ambulance service receiving tax funding the way your fire and police do? And 67% of respondents said they would. Interesting, there was an opportunity for people to leave messages and comments. I don't know if we have any of this with us tonight, but there were some of the comments that were really off the wall. A lot of the comments are really concerned about the well-being of our staff, right? Paying them fair wages. A lot of real concern about EMTs being properly paid and appreciated for what they do. But unfortunately, under the current financial situation, the funding challenges that EMS systems have, it's difficult without municipal support. It's difficult without those kind of fees and taxes to pay at a level that is comparable to career fire or to law enforcement. So we looked at basically the cost readiness.
So, sorry, can I ask a question real quick?
Oh, sure.
So on the numbers that were on the previous slide, was that were those relative to this local area, or was that just in general?
All our communities that we currently serve in North Carolina.
Okay,
So did not include Indian Valley, at all.
okay,
So, yeah, the actual municipality by, the boundaries.
okay. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, great, sorry. Feel free to, I kind of ramble sometimes, so just, so you know. Go ahead and pick that next slide there. Kind of talked about, obviously, like everybody else, expenses are up, inflationary impacts to our operation are huge. Slowdowns on the supply chain. If we order an ambulance today, we gotta get creative when we try to find it, but if I ordered one, it could take up to 2 years for us to get delivery on that vehicle. Right, 2 years, right? And the costs have gone through the roof. They've increased, 25, 30% in some cases. Really amazing to me how much it costs for us to do that. Obviously, I've talked about, the market, adjusting with pay. It's a very competitive market. If you're a paramedic, you can pretty much go to work anywhere. Right, very solid. Talked about the 1.6 million. We've obviously upgraded our fleet. I'm sure you guys have noticed the change in that. Obviously, our ambulances kind of floating around all over the place. We've taken a different approach in how we deploy those ambulances. They're no longer sitting in buildings unless all the ambulances are readily available. They move around to ensure that we can get a good response time. Our ambulance participate in a deployment strategy that we strive for, that gets ambulances to a scene within 8 minutes and 59 seconds. So we're constantly moving. They may be sitting in a wall over at Alcee Plaza, or sitting over here at Hatfield Fire Company, or sitting in various locations. And that's because based on the number of ambulances that are readily available, and locations, they're just constantly moving to ensure that, you don't have an ambulance responding from way on the other side of the North Bend to get there. So to improve our response times. Lots of upgrades with regards to our communications and technology, so forth, that we've done to ensure that quality care and meet the expectation of the public. Kind of a breakdown about how we get paid, and essentially it's about how. If you look at all of the calls that we run, and how we build it, and no pays and the unfunded or underfunded kind of reimbursements, it's about 50% of all the runs we get is what we get paid for. So that run pretty standard across the nation. That's why we're in the situation we are. I mean, we're seeing it really impact a lot of communities. In the last month alone, 3 ambulance providers in Pennsylvania shuttered the doors because of funding issues. I want to tell you that, are we going to shut our doors? We're doing well. I'll be perfectly frank. So we have to take our eye off the ball. What I mean by that is, covering that 14%, I have to look at other areas. I have to look at what are other opportunities and revenue streams that I can focus on and try to make money on, to kind of backfill so we can provide the services in North Bend. We currently provide services for the United States military with an operation at Oklahoma Army Depot under a federal contract. And we have a contractual arrangement with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Both of those operations are completely independent of our 911 and emergency ambulance operations. And they backfill funds that allow us to be able to invest in technology and to do these things. Unfortunately, they require an incredible amount of effort, management, and there's not a lot of security surrounding them. We have to competitively bid for those services every few years so they get dried up as quickly as they appear. So I come before the municipalities on the premise of an ounce of prevention, instead of coming to you for a cure, right? So that's the focus of where we're at. What we want to do with those funds, right? We're going to spend them in 3 areas. We will not commingle those accounts. We will have those accounts separated by municipalities. So you can see exactly where we're spending. We've gone to great efforts to be transparent. We publicly posted all of our financial data and records to public for anybody to review, and our plans. Ultimately, we know that these are the 3 areas of concern for us. Obviously, ambulance replacement and getting them on a schedule. staffing retention program. We currently do not have a matching retirement program for our staff. So although they're doing well today, we have many 30-year staffers that have not had access to a retirement program, matching retirement program. So that's a real priority for our organization to fund, so that we can have that long-term sustainability and retention for staff. And improve clinical growth. The one challenge that we face is we want to continue to reduce mortality in our communities, reduce the morbidity, and improve the overall outcomes of our patients when they have medical emergencies. Unfortunately, there's no financial incentive to do that. We do it, but there's no recompense or remuneration for providing those services. So if we do introduce ultrasound, which we just purchased, and they're $5,000 a unit, and the training associated is probably another couple $1,000, we'll be able to do better diagnostic and deliver better care. But Medicare or Medicaid or Independence Blue Cross, we care less whether we do that. It's a good thing for us because we believe that every opportunity that we can do to improve the outcome of a patient, every 1% that we lean forward on to give a patient that better of an opportunity of surviving an incident, a heart attack, or a stroke. We want to strive to do that. We want to use these funds to help explore new technologies, medical enhancements to make our community safer when those life-threatening emergencies occur.
If I can ask a question, so what gaps do currently exist between your technology versus what's needed in the community? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I got you. There's a lot of clinical advances. Like number one is the big problem we have in our community is the number one or number two call in all of our municipalities that we serve are falls. Right. We all know that elderly folks that maybe that person that is very active, they're out every day, they're doing their thing, and then they have that one fall. Right. That one incident that begins that cascade of decline and ultimately ends in death, right? Their whole life changes. They become sedentary. They develop an ulcer, they get pneumonia, they get, we've all witnessed that happen. We think we could do a lot more with like mitigating those risks, right? If you're tripping over a rug, home inspections, if it's, providing early assessments for various diseases of recognition. Fortunately, we only get reimbursed if we transport a patient. So there's no encouragement for EMS systems to work in a safety capacity to reduce risks within a community. It's almost counterintuitive, right? If we reduce the number of patients we transport, we reduce the funding that we have, right? So that's one side of the coin that we really want to invest in through what we refer to as global integrated health and community care medicine. We're working with Jefferson on a program for reducing hospital readmissions for congestive heart failure patients, because we know that statistically that patients who get readmitted within the first 30 days after having an exacerbation of congestive heart failure or additional kind of impact have an incredibly high likelihood of death. So those are kind of the programs that we really want to try to finance and move forward as far as a risk mitigation and, to improve the quality of life for the people that live in our communities. Some of the other gaps would be blood. Blood's very expensive, but it's shown that being able to carry and administer blood in the field in trauma situations is a way to save lives. Significantly improves that. The cost to initiate blood is high. The blood refrigeration unit itself is $20,000 just to have the blood refrigeration. So there's a lot of clinical services. We've taken on the chin as an organization because it's the right thing to do. We've added video laryngoscopy, which improves our airway success. We do sedation-assisted innovation, but many agencies aren't approved to do that. So patients are in a crisis where we have to get control of their airways to keep them alive. We're able to basically give a sedative and then put them to sleep and then take their airway. The big one is we all know about the opiate crisis, right? And we've seen many cases where a person is rightfully administered an opiate for pain in a clinical environment and subsequently become addicted to that pain medicine. we on our own at $3,000 a unit purchased nitrox, which is nitrous oxide, basically laughing gas. As an alternative for us to be able to not use opiates where we didn't have to use it, right? And particularly in the pediatric population, much more better to, it's better to give them a non-opiate to manage their pain. But we don't want them to suffer through pain. So the nitrox gives us a great tool to use to do that. So those are just examples of clinical enhancements that they're unfunded. We don't get anything for those services, and they're very expensive for us to operate. But they're the right things to do. And because of these endeavors, the training, Borough Township and Taliesin gave $130,000 to our organization. So what we did with that money is we met with Jefferson Health and their education, and we housed an internal paramedic program, which I'm proud to say that next year we will graduate 10 paramedics in our service and put them out in the field. Right? So again, improving. We want to show that we're going to be good stewards of the public's money. We audit our financials every year and make those available and transparent. And we'll show the evidence of what we're using that for. We'll show that the improvements that we're going to make with the funds, if you choose to do that.
And so one other question real quick. Actually, I have a couple, but so you only get reimbursed for the transportation. Anything that you do during that transportation is just done at goodwill. Is that how that works?
So we have a base rate. So we're based on the level of care, basic life support, advanced life support. There's a base rate and there's a mileage reimbursement.
Okay.
The challenge that we have is, we will bill, let's just say we bill, these are loose numbers. If we bill $1,000 worth in ELS transport, or rental transport, Medicare might come back and say, we're only going to pay $400 of that. Okay. So we can't, we can attempt to balance bill that to a Medicare recipient, but we're probably not going to get reimbursed. That's going to end up being a write-off for that. And if they're a subscriber, that's great because then, there is no balance bill go from there. But we are routinely handicapped by increased scrutiny on what they want to pay. Well, why couldn't that patient have gone to the hospital in a car, right? Or having to justify the means of the transportation. And making us jump through more and more hoops to get paid. As well, there'll be unfunded mandates. There'll be, we're forced to participate in a ground ambulance cost analysis where we're not funded for it, but we have to provide financial data at an incredibly detailed level to the federal government so that they can study to see, well, just how much is an ambulance costing, to do that. But there's no funding for us to do that. But yet we have to pay accountants and teams of people to scour through the data that they're requesting. The one promising opportunity the federal government was trying to do is a few years ago, they authorized something called ET3, which would allow ambulance services to provide treatment on scene and get paid. So we don't take it to the hospital. Maybe we work with them. We did this through COVID, and there was a reimbursement for that. And we could transport to an alternate destination. So maybe they don't need to go to an emergency room. Maybe they just need to go to an urgent care, right? And that was supposed to be a 3-year pilot. The administration canceled that just about a month ago within the first year of pilot, so they weren't going to fund it, so it took out of the budget. So that kind of put dashed a lot of our hopes and dreams on being able to adjust how we handle calls and obviously being first, but those are just some of the challenges.
And then it says your response time is 5 minutes and 54 seconds. Right. Are you adequately staffed with equipment and people to keep that up, or is that the final target you're trying to achieve?
Our goal nationally, the gold standard is less than 9 minutes, 8 minutes, 59 seconds. On the latest, I literally ran the report before I left for Hatfield Borough, and your average response time year to date is 6 minutes and 43 seconds. And again, your number one call are falls. Now the numbers in Hatfield, they're not large, obviously, we ran about 118, calls, in the borough. But your residents have special needs, right? We have a weak population, right? We're seeing, not just in your jurisdiction, but we're seeing changes with, some of the social, classes. We're dealing with an immigration challenge, even here in our communities. We had a, family from, Guatemala that was dropped off in front of our building because they got confused where the hospital was. The bus driver just dropped them off. Undocumented, came from Texas, right? Ends up in front of our building, with a 9-year-old with a medical condition that we're trying to sort through. So we're often at the front line. Behavioral crisis, we're seeing more and more incidents involving, behavioral crisis, gun violence. We had a 900% increase in gun-related incidents from last year. 900%. Now the numbers are low in general, but it's still a 900% increase. So we're adjusting, right? We're constantly adjusting. We had to buy body armor for all of our EMTs, because 7 out of 10 EMTs reported a violent encounter in our mission. Just recently, we had an EMT staff, not our EMT, an EMT staff, at a hospital, 3 times in the back of our ambulance trying to do that. So we're had an EMT assaulted yesterday on call, right? So, and those are at $600 or so of vests that we had to provide to keep our people safe. So, we're trying to do a lot to sustain it, but yes, the goal is to continue to maximize recovery. We're looking at a new software system, that we put in our dispatch terminal that receives the 911 call electronically. It's also tracking through GIS and GPS where our ambulances are and making a determination of which is the most appropriate closest ambulance to respond to that call. And beyond that, it uses artificial intelligence to gauge where is the best place to place an ambulance at any given time, based on traffic, based on road construction, and based on availability of ambulances. So it's going to give us a lot more insight, more instead of us figuring out, well, we need to put it, it's going to do it like that for us. So yeah, so we're going to continue to strive for those goals.
And last question, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to ask so many questions. What from a funding standpoint, how much are you estimating per resident that you would need to meet the goals that you set, both equipment and staff?
For your community?
I'm just saying in general, so I'm
So
trying to think about it as a per person
So
basis.
ultimately our goal is, and we realize that this is a journey, right? We realize that, and working with our municipal manager partners and trying to strategize how we get to where we need. We understand that this is a journey. We think ultimately for sustainability and long term, it's a millage, right? It's a dedicated tax fund. And we assess that at 0.014. To be able to get to right at that $1 million mark across all 7 municipalities this year. We'll be adding the Indian Valley municipalities, Telford, Souderton, and Franconia in a request. We've already kind of started preparing them for next year. That's what goes. I think where it stands for Capital Borough is somewhere around $20,000 is where we kind of come in at. With the 0.014, and our census data might be a little off. No one agrees with that. We can't seem to figure out the census data. That data comes in at $19,329 on a 0.014% millage if we get to that point. Which really falls in very closely with where we were targeted with regards to, we looked at all the municipalities and we just looked at those, that cost of readiness and those responses that we do not transport on. And then we extrapolated that no transport cost per call per group, each municipality, and then we came up with a number, and that's where that $20,000 number came from. So, some municipalities may pay less based on the size of their organization. Obviously, the smaller municipalities may tend to have a larger per person kind of contribution. Versus the population of the larger municipalities may have a smaller one based on their usage and so forth. That's kind of how we came to that point.
I can ask one more, so. Everyone knows I'm annoying like this. Have you, in your organization, have you guys looked at trying to get more legislative support to help you with some of these shortfalls?
Yeah, we believe the solution long term, we believe we share the governor's opinion, or part of his opinion on this. He believes that this is a municipal issue. It's not a state issue, right? And we sort of believe that, but we also believe it's a state issue as well. So meaning that we believe the state should provide a mechanism not to administer funds, but provide funds to municipalities to administer. We think the LST tax should be increased. I think now it's currently like $52. We think that should be about $104. And we think that part of that increase should require municipalities to earmark, 30 of that towards emergency ambulance services. By empowering the municipality to, have a funding stream other than millage, to do that. Now, will this work for every EMS system? No. But it goes a long way. I mentioned today that the $20 million increase in Medicaid funding around ambulance, it impacts us by $45,000, which is, if I divided that out by the 90 full-time employees that I have, it would equate to about a 9-cent an hour pay raise. So we need a whole lot of $20 million initiatives to fix this problem across the Commonwealth, right? So, things have changed. Our organization has changed over 90 years. As a proud organization, we are the oldest operating EMS system founded by an African American. It's amazing, right? What Dr. Boss was able to accomplish in 1933. We've gone from a totally volunteer organization to a career organization, not just career, but they organized labor, the National Association of Firefighters Union, right? And we continually reinvest into our communities, being a not-for-profit. We donate our ambulances to cover events for municipalities at no cost. And we estimate that to be over $100,000 in different kind of contributions and services that we provide for the North Mid municipalities. We're not charging for having an ambulance at an event. Right? We still have to pay for that crew to sit there. Oftentimes it's an extra crew. You only take them off 911 rotation. So it's all paid at overtime. So there's significant costs associated with providing those three services. And things also do the car seat installation and community CPR training, and a host of other things that we provide at no cost to the communities. But the organization has changed, funding is changing. Obviously, I recognize the stress that local government, state government, and federal government have with trying to meet all the challenges and financial requests. We have a government that has had our Social Security to a point where now they're finding ways to cut services here and there and reducing, 4% across the nation with regards to providers and various services product programs, making it more difficult to pay, more scrutiny, right? Recently employed 17,000 enforcement officers for Health Insurance Affordability and Accountability Act, privacy stuff. So that'll generate fines and revenue. So it's very difficult in this climate to get a one solution kind of fix for the EMS crisis in our nation. Will become a disaster. We're already seeing ambulance deserts out west in areas in Pennsylvania, rural areas, where they just can't get an ambulance in a reasonable time. And one might argue, well, how does that affect Asheville? How does that affect Philadelphia? Well, it affects it because when the rural ambulance can't respond, then the suburban ambulance has to respond. When the suburban ambulance is tied up on a rural response, then the metro ambulance has to respond, all increasing the response times and reducing people's chances of survival from this incident. Last month alone, we responded over 100 times to other communities for an ambulance because there was no ambulance left, right? And that's pretty regular, and as far away as Quakertown. An overdose at Walmart in Quakertown 2 weeks ago, we responded to. So the crisis is real, and we're doing everything we can, exhausting every avenue for funding. But we're asking for that council convention.
I promise I'm done.
Thank you. Great question. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Great job on the slide.
Got it for you as well.
Oh,
It's not in my nature. That's awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, I think that was a great presentation. So we'll go to item 5, the 23 North Main Street Arbor Grove Development Sketch Plan presentation.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mike McGinnis. I'm an attorney with Begley Carlin. I'm here tonight with my client, Mike Amoroso, and Bob Cunningham from Holmes Engineering, whose office has prepared the sketch plan, which is before you for discussion. We refer to this development, potential development, as 23 North Main Street, but to be exact, even though it will be referred to that way, my client is actually the equitable owner of 2 properties, as are depicted on the sketch plan. The first lot is actually the more regular lot. It's traditional, it's currently improved, and it fronts on North Main Street, a little over 10,000 square feet. And then the second parcel is the larger parcel. It's landlocked. It's to the rear on the sketch plan in front of you. It's approximately 1.28 acres. Property which fronts on North Main Street is zoned for commercial, and the property which is unimproved is split zone between for commercial and R1. I'm going to apologize at the outset for some of the members here who were at the planning commission meeting. Some of this is going to be a bit repetitive, but what I would like to do is go back in time, get everybody here up to speed on how we've arrived at the plan, which is before you this evening for discussion. And also to contrast this plan with the plan that we presented a couple weeks ago to the planning commission. So if we rewind the clock, my client appeared in front of the planning commission initially last December to discuss a development opportunity at this site. What was proposed at that time was the demolition of the existing home, which fronts on North Main Street, and then the construction of a mixed-use office / residential structure, which would be primarily comprised of 6,800 square feet of office on the first floor, and then 3 stories comprised of 22 apartments vertically above the commercial first floor. The purpose at that time was to develop what was envisioned to be a by right proposal, as close as we could get to a by right proposal, which would be in conformance with the underlying zoning, understanding and acknowledging the challenges which exist in any scenario between developing a substantial development comprised over 2 lots with multiple zoning districts at play. The Borough Planning Commission, the neighbors, conversations with my client and reviewing the meeting minutes, the conversation at the last meeting at that time primarily voiced 3 concerns. 1, there was some traffic, obviously, that would be, I think, fairly substantial generated from that proposal. 2, the height of the building and the fit of, really, to be frank, a building of that nature and proximity to some of the other residential uses. And then 3, I think logistically, the biggest hurdle was compliance with some of the fire marshal concerns regarding that building. And again, this is just my opinion, but I think development of this property, in conformance with commercial, just in general, is always going to present some concerns regarding potential use versus some of the other surrounding properties. So we went back, we reassessed the plan, and the initial pivot, as I'll call it, was to a twin plan. So we scrapped the mixed commercial residential plan, excuse me, and came up with a twin plan that had some logistical issues. So just to highlight a couple of those, there was no driveway with twin plans. There weren't any garages. There was a compressed rear yard, more compressed in fact than what is before you with this plan. And then with the layout, there were 2 units to what I'm going to label the left portion of the zoning plan in front of you in the area that we have currently shown as a basin and community area. So it took away some of the additional green space. We received some of the comments, questions, concerns with the twin plan, and I think I don't mean to speak for anyone at the borough, but I think the general sentiment was, yes, this is better than what was presented before, but it's still not quite there in terms of what we would want potentially at this location. So we scrapped the twin plan, pivoted to a townhome plan, which is very similar to what's before you this evening. And we proposed that to the planning commission. So we came before the planning commission and said, we have townhomes, we have 10 units here. We do have a garage, we have driveways, we have spillover parking, we have a community area. I think this is better. We've gotten better with each instance of what we proposed in our opinion. And we also at that time discussed something that we'll reaffirm tonight, which is the development. We'd be willing as part of the development to either deed restrict, enter into an easement of perpetuity, or transfer and convey the portion of the property again on the label the northwest portion of the plan to the borough, which would, I think, allow for additional green space connections to the existing park in the area. So that's something that we offered and we're reaffirming as an offer this evening and moving forward with this potential development.
And I'm sorry, and that's not presented here though, right?
It's not,
Okay.
it's not on, the offer is not on the plan, I guess, noted specifically, but yes, that is something that of course would be documented. We would enter into an agreement at that point with the borough prior to any approvals. So we took feedback a couple weeks ago from the planning commission. There were a couple neighbors who also had some questions, comments, and concerns, and we were able to, I think, further refine the plan. And I'd like to again highlight some of the changes that we've made between the meeting a couple weeks ago and what's before you for discussion tonight. So specifically, I believe the last iteration of the plan had 7 overflow parking spots. One of the questions, actually, one of the notes I had was there was an aspiration potentially to generate between 10 and 15 additional spaces. We have accomplished that with this iteration. So we're up to 12 spaces for overflow parking. So that number has been expanded. We were able to do this by probably most importantly eliminating one of the units. So instead of 10 units, we're down to 9 units. There was again some sentiment and desire expressed to perhaps, cut a unit, and we were able to do that, facilitate the additional parking. This plan, and I will note it's probably a little bit confusing. There is a plan note that says 2 garages. The rendering that we have, which is on this portion of the PDF, still shows 1, but you'll see the note. We're able to go to 22-foot wide units. They would have 2-car garages with each of the homes. Which again, I understand the comment that most townhome developments are really most single family developments. A lot of people don't use the garages for parking their vehicles. They use it for storage, but nonetheless, it's an additional amenity and additional space potentially for vehicles to park in addition to the overflow parking on site. And then one of the other items that I think is worth highlighting again at the beginning here is the last, this seems small, but might be important. The last version of this had the community area and the stormwater flipped. And what I mean by that is if you look at the area depicted, stormwater in the area that's noted as community area. Community area was further to the south, stormwater is further to the north. And that raised 2 primary concerns. First, with respect to the stormwater, There was a comment in the Borough Engineers Review Letter of the proximity to the potentially above ground basin to the corner of the nearest unit on the far left, what you see is unit 5. I think with a note of 15 feet being the standard of what would be desired if we weren't achieving it at that point. There was a conversation at the Planning Commission that, of course, this is a zoning sketch plan, so Rob's office will have to run for full stormwater calcs as part of any land development. We hadn't finalized an above ground or below ground stormwater system. So those things were things we would address, but we noted the concern. And really in tandem with that, I think there was a question or concern raised about the location of the labeled community area vis-a-vis the postal service and some of the postal service parking spaces. So really assessing this, we think it would make more sense to have this potentially flipped where the community area, which could be a gazebo or other items that we're open for exploring as part of this process, be closer in proximity to the units, and then the stormwater be closer in proximity to the adjacent parcels. So we also flip that as part of our design. Obviously, this is a sketch plan. We're not asking council to make any action, take any action tonight with the plan, but I wanted to go through the last 10 months here to really highlight the fact that I think my client is genuinely trying and I think genuinely improving this design through each iteration of the proposed development. Understand the fact that whenever you have somebody that's proposing to develop in any meaningful way property that's otherwise landlocked, a lot of the individuals who reside there, to be candid, are used to that being open space in every regard. So inevitably, there's going to be questions and concerns regarding proposed development. I made the statement to the individuals who appeared at the last meeting and will affirm it. We will be more than happy to continue to work with them to provide as much buffering, planning, screening, anything that we can do as part of our development, with the hope, of course, to reasonably utilize the site as part of our proposal. We think the project, this version of the project would be a positive for the borough, and we realize we still have some challenges to navigate. What I mean by that is we looked at how to potentially effectuate and get approval for a plan like this. And really to just very briefly run through that, the problem is we can't just rezone the property all to R1, which is a portion of how this is zoned, because R1 does not allow townhomes as a use. So theoretically, we could rezone this to R1, but it wouldn't allow the use that we have before for consideration. And although we meet the density regulations and requirements in the R4 districts for townhomes, there are certain performance characteristics like rear lots with this layout setbacks that we're just never going to be able to achieve in order to develop townhomes with this layout. So even in a world where we had just the ability to apply R4 standards, we could meet a number of the R4 standards, but we can't meet all of the R4 standards. And what that means is, at the end of the day, eventually we would need either some action from the zoning hearing board for this, certainly, or something like an overlay. I understand those things aren't going to be discussed and vetted tonight, but just to be candid, there's no world where we can create this plan and have it come to fruition in a by right nature. So we're going to need some relief or cooperation, hopefully moving forward to make this or version of this plan a reality. We have gone over the review letters that have been supplied. I made a comment at the Planning Commission that obviously, if we were here for land development, we discuss will complies and waivers. I think that's a bit premature. We did highlight a couple items and notes we had. We'd be more than happy to discuss those with the Planning Commission. Alternatively, what I would suggest is at least have Mr. Cunningham come up to a brief synopsis on top of what I did, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, at this point, keeping in mind that our primary goal is to introduce this to you all formally, take your comments, questions, concerns into account on our end, and then hopefully be able to navigate this moving forward with your office, Harper, and everyone to ideally create a successful development here. So we do appreciate the indulgence over the last 9 or 10 months. We hope again we're evidencing on our end our desire to be good community partners and keep striving to achieve that here. So appreciate your time.
Good evening, Rob Cunningham with Holmes Cunningham Engineering. Mike talked about basically most of the highlights. Some of the things that came up in the comments and we've worked to address. The location of the driveway, obviously, we're all familiar that this is pretty close to the intersection. So we've created a situation where we push the driveway as far away from the neighbor and as far away from the intersection as possible. But obviously, as you come into the site, you want to keep create space to have the on-street parking and things like that. Throughout the process, we've also widened the driveway to 26 feet to meet the fire code standards. Obviously, as Mike had mentioned, the fire marshal's comments on the original plan were probably the hardest to overcome. So going into this design, we realized that that's where we really need to focus our efforts. They're townhome units, they will be sprinklered. And then what we've done is created a situation where the driveway creates a turnaround area. It's not your traditional cul-de-sac that you might be aware of, but it's a T intersection that a truck could come access the units and then back into the overflow parking area to the northeast and then exit the property. So one of the fire marshal comments was to provide additional information on how that would be done, and we would do that at the land development stage. But based on the width and our experience with similar projects, this is what we'd be looking at. Couple other things. There was concern that if we did an above ground stormwater basin, I think Mike touched upon this, that it would take up the available lawn space and green space for a community area. After discussions and looking at it, we believe we could accomplish the stormwater management requirements in an underground facility where you'd have lawn on top. So you'd have the opportunity to kick a ball or play baseball or do something like that in the green space in the community area. It would also allow for, and in the future, if there is ever a connection to the public park, you'd be able to put a walkway through there over it. And you're not trying to navigate around the stormwater basin where you have concerns about it being full of water and things like that. So those are the major concerns. Obviously, how we deal with the intersection and the driveway interaction with Main Street is something that we'll have to work with the traffic engineer on. All of the stormwater will be reviewed, but we believe we've come up with a plan that starts to address many of the concerns the planning commission did have. They wanted more parking, and that 2 garage spaces isn't, parking spaces, but it is available for parking. So if somebody does have a motorcycle, they don't have to put in an overflow space or something like that. So we believe that there's enough parking, and this plan is probably, obviously, of the ones we presented, we feel that this one is the best that meets the needs of not only us, but the community. So.
Yeah, just FYI, we've had a lot of experiences with overflow parking and development, so that's why everybody's very sensitive to the overflow.
That was explained more than once.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. So curiosity, the underground basin, which I think, and I think we even talked about it here, that we, that is kind of a better option versus an above ground, right? How do you accomplish that? Just out of curiosity.
There's a lot of systems now. Traditionally, it was perforated pipe and stone, kind of in a underground facility. It would accept all the runoff, it would fill up and then filter up and out the structure. So it creates a storage volume underground, similar to an above ground basin. So sometimes it takes a larger footprint. They've actually created like 97% void space units that take up the same footprint and you're not then increasing costs and things like that, by taking up more area and, increasing your construction costs. So there's multiple ways to do it. This we'd be open to looking at all of those, but traditionally pipe and stone is your cheapest option.
Okay.
Ask you a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you counting the garages as parking spaces?
No,
Okay, so where are the parking spaces for each unit?
so there's two parking spaces in the driveways in front of the unit,
Okay,
and then there are along the entrance drive, there are 6, and then there are 6 in a little parking area in the northeast corner.
point out the northeast corner for me, because I thought that was where the fire truck needed.
It is, but the spaces, the fire truck would turn around in the 2060, and then you'd have 10 by 20 parking spaces
Okay,
next to that.
okay, just want to make sure, because in another development where we counted the garages and nobody uses the garage for parking, it was a disaster.
Yeah, we're at 3.5 spaces per unit for the 9 units we shop. So,
And then this will be governed and managed by an association. That was a question that came up before. So just to be clear, that would be in place here.
So if you did an underground storage basin, the association would own it.
Correct.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, the part you're showing as developable or developing is all zone core commercial, right?
There's a split. I have to look at exactly where.
half of lot 5 is in what would be R1, and that change was to effectuate the additional parking. So we originally, I believe, we had all of the units in the core commercial, but we shifted them to the left to get some that parking in place that we could use.
Will that create any problems for us?
Well, what I was thinking was that R1 doesn't permit townhouses. Core commercial doesn't permit townhouses, but would have permitted their first building they showed us with the stores on the first floor and the apartments above it.
Mhm.
So if we were thinking of this site as core commercial, but some of the units are not in the core commercial.
I think Rob's saying that unit 5 bisects core commercial and R1.
I believe that bump in the property line back there is the zoning line runs vertically through the property.
All right, I'm off the top of my head just thinking if we were to make a change to core commercial to allow this type of development, you'd still have to go to the zoning board.
Well,
If you had that unit sticking out.
if I could be so bold, if that is the one item that would hold up an approval, I'm very confident we could make that work.
Make that go away.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Because it is in core commercial, which makes it different from most of the street, but the same as you don't have a satellite picture, but core commercial is all around it to the right. So that's why I was thinking if we were going to do anything, it would be with the core commercial.
You also meant, so the non-developed property right near where it hits Main Street, you're saying now as part of this, that's not going to be developed, it's not going to be used or modified?
The northwest corner of the site plan
Is that what it is between where the entrance is and the post office?
That's a property owned by a separate thing.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I thought, okay,
Right, so our property doesn't include that home. There's a home basically where the drive is that would be demolished.
Up over, right there, that's the space,
So that space
it's going to the.
would go to the
would
borough.
borough.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
it's
there's
for
a
open
park
space.
there.
ah,
Yeah.
okay, okay,
That's like non-developed space,
Right,
potentially could go to the borough.
correct, that's right.
okay, okay. And then you'd mentioned there were several variances you were going to need. Um. Are we saying that there's no way to develop this without the variances, or there's no way to do it in this optimized design that you have?
Well, as a threshold issue, we can't build townhomes here. So just right off the bat, in the core commercial district, unless there was a change, for example, to permit townhomes, and we could work on that, we would have to go to the zoning hearing board, period.
And so that's that's the language you talked to us about before, right?
Right,
Okay.
and the thing that worries me is if they go to the zoning board. Zoning board might find this a self-created hardship. You're the guys who want townhouses. Whose fault is that? You know what I mean? And then they wouldn't get the variance.
Mhm.
That's what worries me because it would be a use variance, which is a harder thing to get than dimensional. And, you know, I mean, depending on what you think of these things, they could actually put something worse in because it's core commercial.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's kind of where you'd have to. I think Borough Council would probably have to act to make it happen and to make some changes to the core commercial zoning to allow something like this.
Right, and help me remember, we talked about the language before and you expressed that it wasn't that big of a change in the language to make that happen if we wanted to do that.
Well, as opposed
remember
to
correctly.
changing the zoning, because
Right,
it's
as-
already
yes.
core commercial.
Right.
So as opposed to changing the zoning to R4, where it would be a spot zone,
Right.
no doubt about it.
Mhm.
If you made a text change to the uses that were permitted in core commercial, they could probably do something similar to this.
Okay, I'm just
Okay.
trying to remember the conversation,
Right.
because it was a while ago.
But
so.
that would also mean, for example, where the borough had its offices while we were building this building,
Mhm.
that's also core commercial. So somebody could redevelop that parcel if they wanted to into any of the things in core commercial, but they could redevelop it as townhouses,
Right,
depending on, you know, where you allow townhouses and how big of a lot or how small, you know what I mean?
right,
So if you make a text change, you're allowing it in the entire district. So that's kind of, you gotta think about that.
Mhm.
Is it appropriate for the entire district? Yes or no?
right, right.
Fair enough.
No, I completely agree. Zoning relief is tethered to the particular parcel that seeks and requires zoning relief, whereas as Harvard pointed, revised the core commercial standards, that doesn't just apply to this property, it applies to every property that's owned for commercial.
Right, and how big is your lot?
Yeah.
Yeah, around 1.6.
I'm sorry?
1.6 acres.
1.6 acres. So you could limit it to lots
Its
as,
size, yeah.
you know, at least 1.5 or 1.6 in acreage, but we have some of them in core commercial.
Mhm.
The other thing that we would want to be sure of is that we made limiting language so that we want to keep, or at least the prior borough council had designed core commercial to try to keep the streetscape, you know, and so you don't want people tearing down the lovely houses along Main Street and changing the whole block differently. You'd probably have to have language inserted to make sure you weren't encouraging that.
And I think from our perspective, again, all cards on the table to be as candid as possible. You know, we go to the zoning hearing board and we can ask for a variance for this, and as part of the presentation and make an argument about the fact that this is landlocked and it's unique property and you have to be able to reasonably develop it, and all those things I'd be comfortable making from a dimensional standpoint. When you get to the use, the question could arise, well, what's preventing you from developing this with a mixed building in compliance and conformance with the underlying zoning? And that's a tricky answer because we think we might be able to do that, but it's sort of a snake eating its tail, because I don't think anybody really, I don't want to speak for the borough, but I don't think anybody really believes that that development is the best development for this site. So we're in a tricky situation because obviously I can't stand up there and argue that because I'm defeating my own argument, but the by right plan isn't one that we think is as appropriate for the community. I'm using by right, the borough might not agree, but from our perspective, the by right plan, we don't think is as strong of an option, either from our perspective or potentially our view of the borough's perspective. Development. So I echo the sentiments that if there's an appetite for it in subsequent conversations, probably subject to additional tweaks and revisions to the plan, it would seem like perhaps the best avenue would be some sort of text amendment along those lines. Again, if borough council ends up thinking that that's the right.
And so what were some of the other variances as well?
So so basically what we did was we looked at the existing R4 requirements. We said, okay, what is the district that permits townhomes? So if we were to presume that, and I agree, you can't just rezone this to R4 spot zoning, there is an R4 right here. But we didn't want to just pull performance standards from the sky. We wanted to say, okay, in a theoretical world, since we're building townhomes, what are the performance standards in the borough for townhomes? So as I mentioned, the dwelling units per acre we meet, we're actually better than the minimum. It was the minimum of 10 units, now it's better than the minimum. But the rear yard setback, for example, there's a 40-foot rear yard setback requirement with the R4 district, and we're at 20 feet. And I just don't think there's any possible way to design this and comply with the 40-foot rear yard setback. In terms of, I think our end unit, I don't know if this has changed from the last design. We did this analysis was for the 10 units, but our end units were 5 feet. I think the lot width was 20 feet and then 35 for end units, and we're now at 22, but it was 30 feet for end units. I don't know if that's changed. We were a couple feet below that. We might be able to achieve that now that we cut a unit, but that was one of the items we looked at, so we didn't comply with. The side yard setback 15 feet was required, and we were at 10. So there's a little areas where we might be able to sharpen our pencils and get there, especially since we cut a unit. But that was us taking a look at the R4 standards and saying, how close can we get to these? Because in an ideal world, what I would have loved to do would be to come in front of you as a body and say, if we pretended this was R4, we could do this. It's exactly how you designed your R4 district for townhomes. We aren't quite there with this, and there's a couple hurdles like the rear yard setback that I just don't think are feasible to achieve, but we are close on a number of other fronts, so we'd have to keep working with borough consultants moving forward there.
We didn't look at this as lotted townhouses, but more of a planned community where each owner owns their home, their deck, their driveway, but the community is operated under the homeowners association as a whole. So
Like lawn maintenance. and
Correct, so-
be through a contract.
people can't put up fences between their units, and all of those things are administered that way. So you don't have the lot requirements. Or you wouldn't need the lot requirements because you wouldn't be creating individual lots. You would look at the community as a whole.
And looking at this, how many, so obviously there might be opportunities for setbacks and things like that based on the number of units. How many units what's the minimum number of units you need to build on this for it to be worthwhile for you? If I can ask that question.
Yeah, so when we were at 20 units, or 10 units, I'm sorry. When we were at 10 units, they were 20-foot wide. So that obviously has a purchase price of X. We were able to go to a little bit larger unit. So losing that unit still gets us to a desirable financial project, but accomplishes getting more parking and doing that. So we think that 9 is basically as low as we'll be able to go and make this project a reality.
Yeah, so, that's a question we can discuss, after this, but we're cutting from 10 to 9, I think was our effort. I mean, I made probably overly cheeky comment at the planning commission that one of the frustrations with residential land development as opposed to industrial or commercial is pretty much every land development I've done. If I have 20 units, the request is for it to be 17. If I have 25, it's 22, and so on and so forth. So we were there at 10. The inevitable question is how many units can you lose? And it was, we think there's some wiggle room. We're going to try to, tighten belt. We got to 9. I'm gonna get hit with a rock if I say we can lose any more, standing here. But we understand that, developing lots like this, obviously density is a concern, so that's my non-answer to the question.
Do you have an aerial showing the larger picture?
No, I think that's all we had tonight.
Can you
Can
pull
we
it up?
do a Google shot? I just want for our council to see how this fits in with the surrounding
Mhm.
areas.
I texted her. She's probably good with this. I did not look at my phone during the meeting.
I was gonna
So
do
you're
it,
good.
but-
You're good. You don't look at your phone during the
No
meeting.
pressure.
I did not.
And you're putting pressure on her right before she's gonna leave. Jamie,
It's
wanna
a
make sure
really
she
old
comes back.
computer, so I don't know.
One more day.
One more
I
day.
think while this is being pulled up, the last item I would say to that, and this is true, is that the unit count in terms of profitability, obviously. Looking to buy a lot to make money, I mean, that would be blunt about it, that's the reality. But that's been a bit more of a moving target over the last year or two. I mean, I've had clients that have gotten under agreement to purchase property and residential or commercial. And because of rates, material costs, lead times, et cetera, 2 years down the line, their budget is completely blown out of whack compared to what they were estimating. So I know we're being a bit facetious, but I think it's Mike's answer to that question 2 years ago might not be the same as it is now, might not be the same as it is, 12 months from now, to be totally transparent.
Yeah, I mean, and part of the reason, and if anyone else in council disagrees or wants to phrase it differently, our property in the borough is precious, right? There's very little of it. So that's why we really kind of scrutinize, and I'm assuming all municipalities scrutinize it, but my experience here from some of the feedback we've gotten from some developers is, hey, you guys scrutinize this pretty hard. It's more than we've gotten from others. So I don't know if that was some of that developers or a couple of developers issues, but I truly think that we do, just because, I mean, property is very limited here. And we are landlocked, right? With the township surrounding us. So again, we really want to focus on how do we develop what little resources we have and do it effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. No.
So it looks like all the houses on Broad Street have an accessory building up against the property.
They mostly have garages.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big garages.
So I'm right on that, okay. It's way too early to get into it, but on the traffic issue, and they acknowledge that their driveway would have to be very close to Broad and Main, maybe right in, right out. Think about it,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we've talked about like pork chops and other sorts of things we have to look
Right.
into here.
I think that's the one of, if not the key question, right? So,
from the neighbor's perspective.
well, I think from everyone's, right? The
Right.
neighbors, flow of traffic, potential accidents. I mean, it's tight through there. And when you make that turn, you can't really see what's coming around the corner anyway. So,
Right.
So I would envision probably, and I'm assuming the traffic study would kind of show this, but probably have to put up lights and other things to warn people or
In the
something.
driveway or
In
something.
driveway, yeah. So,
Those, like, things like that wouldn't be, shown in a traffic study, but yeah, obviously lighting the driveway so that people understand that it is a driveway. From a traffic safety standpoint, obviously, one of the, I believe the neighbor at the corner showed the planning commission meeting and talked about backing out on the main street. Those, that being a major issue. And, my only thought to that is all of our traffic will be obviously coming out head first.
Mhm.
And we have enough length to store 4 or 5 vehicles if for some reason there's a backup on Main Street. I know obviously at times that light isn't the best timed light in the area. So, we would understand that would be something that we would, look to at least get buy-in from the traffic engineer. That we're kind of doing the best thing. Doing right in, right out is not ideal for residential. These people obviously are coming from certain directions. You can know that, but your guest may not, so that, if we can avoid that restriction, but, at certain times, if it is backed up, people will automatically make the right out because that's just the easier movement. They'll go up to Berkey and work their way to 309 that way, as opposed to make a couple lefts to get to Unionville. So, that would be, something we would look at, but, got to accomplish all the zoning stuff and work through the engineering portion after, you get your buy-in on them.
With the
And you're not that hard, by the way. You're not.
right in and
that's
right
screwed.
out.
It's
Jesus.
Right.
More than other people.
Okay, good.
It's the appropriate amount of scrutiny.
All right, good. That's what I like to hear. So,
right in and right out is gonna cause more traffic going through school. They're gonna cut through
Right,
that
they're gonna go through
neighborhood
school road, yeah.
and come out on Wayne, and I think that's gonna cause
Yeah.
an issue there.
Especially during school time.
Yes.
Yeah, now. So.
A bus stop there too, if they're for kids living in that development is gonna be rough. It's right by the lake.
Yeah,
A school bus stop?
Yeah.
Yeah.
and there's already issues with kids crossing over at school anyway. Right,
Mhm.
so from a safety standpoint, so now we're gonna add.
Do they get bus from that close?
Yeah.
They're
They're walkers.
Is
Are they
it-
walkers or buses? Because we're worried about school bus stops.
Well, it depends where you go. If you're North Penn High School,
Then you have.
then you have a bus,
Right.
but Hatfield Elementary is walkers,
The middle
and so
schools-
is Penfield Middle School.
It's Walker's for Miss.
Yeah, you have to live like less than a mile from the school, then you're a walker.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's like right on like the
Right at the
border.
border.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But both of my kids are obviously elementary school walkers, but my daughter, there's no bus for her in the neighborhood, so she has to walk.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I believe it's Steve's neighborhood will be walkers.
Mhm.
As long as there's sidewalks too.
There are sidewalks
Yeah.
here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous when you're crossing for the post office, additional parking there too. Cars don't stop there.
So for next steps,
Yeah, I always thought that was.
are you ready to talk about next steps or what do you wanna?
What would be the next steps?
Among the next steps would be that and they probably already signed this. If you signed a professional services agreements to the engineer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep, they have an
okay.
escrow, yeah.
And they could propose a text amendment. And file an application for a text amendment. They could do that. And then you would consider it, the planning commission would consider it, and things like that. And by text amendment, I mean changing the language
Mhm.
of the core commercial district.
Do we have to do these kind of in steps, or would this all be done once the finalized plan is there?
Well, let's think about that. They could offer. They could offer a text amendment and then we could meet with them and say, we need to change your text amendment this way and you're gonna lose that lot there.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what we think we're gonna do.
Right.
That would be after we got feedback from you and planning commission and everybody else about, what they want to see. The other thing is, at some point, of course, the neighbors are gonna have opinions.
Mhm.
And they're gonna be able to express them at the planning commission usually. And that would be one way to do it.
Yeah,
That would be an open way to do it.
so I would, if I could, I would presume on our end, again, first of all, we weren't expecting any concrete feedback one way or the other, tonight. So on our end, that there is not an expectation for, thumbs up, thumbs down. I mean, I guess if it was just a thumbs down, we would.
No, right?
But the expectation was not, this is great, I'm gonna issue you building permits tomorrow. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's not happening.
That's acknowledged. Again, in my experience, echoing a lot of what Ms. Harper's saying tonight, there's two ways that something like this could happen. If the borough was saying, gee, we want to rethink the core commercial in general, irrespective of this development, and our development was kind of the impetus to do that, to facilitate townhomes, then I would think that the borough, pursuant to a petition, could take that action. Say more commonly, if there's a text amendment or something or an overlay that's being proposed to facilitate a development, oftentimes that is considered in tandem with the development approval. So basically, all the dominoes fall the same night, potentially. The only comment that I would make there is, my clients, expended and will continue to expend resources, at this point to try to bring the plan to fruition, but we're all acknowledging that we don't have, as we stand here tonight, the ability by right to develop this. So what we would hope to achieve, and I think Mike will echo this, is over the next couple of months through dialogue with the borough, hopefully a sentiment that, okay, if this is done correctly and these concerns are addressed and this is presented this way, there's a reasonable likelihood in conjunction with the development being, approved, the amendment would be approved. Because at some point, the big money, a lot of it is going to be on Rob's end with the design and the full land development submission. It's not just the sketch plan. So I think there's going to be a delicate line to walk before tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars are expended. If the borough, we show up a year from now and the borough says, well, why aren't you here? We were not really interested in this. So I don't expect that answer tonight, but I think hopefully we can navigate the process. So if we're pursuing that, if it hits a point where it's a no, which is just like respectfully, we just aren't interested in this. A slow yes is better than a quick no. My mentor taught me that, so we'll work towards the slow yes, but if it becomes a no, we would request that being the response sooner rather than significant expenditures being incurred.
The one thing that you didn't mention was that, the neighbors will have concerns. It would be great if you could meet with the neighbors and, work out their concerns as well. I mean, they'll come to you, but, depending on when they come, you may not be able to fix some things.
Sure. There were 3 neighbors who showed up. So when we went to the planning commission, Mike had sent letters out to say, hey, we're going to discuss this at the planning commission. Again, we're trying to co-opt as much feedback as we can. If you have questions, please come to the meeting. There were, I think, 3 homeowners that showed up with varying degrees of concerns at the planning commission. I know those were expressed. I spoke with them afterwards. I gave them all my card, said, look, even if you're against this, that's fine. I will still give you all the information that we can about this moving forward, hopefully, if you contact me, so I have a way of reaching out to you. Nobody has yet, but we're more than happy to sit down and to do our absolute best to get buy-in and support. Obviously, we can't guarantee the outcome of those. All we can say is we'll keep people included and receive their dialogue, and the concerns that are raised that we can address, we will address.
Yeah. I think to your point, though, if it can be documented in some way, or at least give us a warning as much as you can. And I don't know if you do that through letters to the property owners, or how you can do that, but giving us advance notice on that, because if they show up at the last minute with a major concern, that creates, potential roadblocks. So, okay.
And I would also say to his suggestion about looking at core commercial, so I think that's a very good idea. That we look at that section of the ordinance and see whether there's anything else that needs to be tweaked or tuned up.
Right.
And I thought that was part of the strategic plan last year, anyway, wasn't it? Or maybe not.
I don't think it was, but we've talked about this before. So when we first started looking at the different developments back when it was the business on the bottom and units on the top, or the 40 unit, we started talking about this. We've been talking about it for a little bit. So
I just think we should look at the district and
Yeah.
say, oh yeah, we should fix this also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I would opt to do that too. Like you said, let's look at it as a whole. I mean, we can work out the individual pieces in advance, and I think, again, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I mean, we were excited to see something going in. So I don't think, at least so far, I don't think there's anything that's been a roadblock in our mind to say, no, absolutely not. We don't want to do anything here. When we talked about the 40 units and the part, that was, pretty obvious up front that was going to create some issues. And I think we communicated that pretty quickly. So,
and everyone's been great to work with. Jamie could not be more responsive than she's been so far. So, had a very pleasant and positive experience so far.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the feedback. Appreciate
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Jamie, I'm sorry, I'm scribbling. I was like, I don't want to ask Jamie a question. Yeah, my handwriting's horrible too, so. Thanks, guys.
Good night.
All right, I think it was a good discussion. We'll go on to item 6, announcements.
Next council meeting is September 20th, the regular meeting here in council chambers at 7 p.m. It is also the night of the strategic planning meeting, which starts at 5 p.m. Borough is scheduled to meet Wednesday, September 27th at 8 a.m. here in council chambers. The Hatfield Museum Historical Society is scheduled to meet Tuesday, September 26th at 7 p.m. at their new location here in the Borough Building in council chambers. Next planning commission meeting is scheduled for October 7th or October 2nd at 7 p.m. in council chambers. The borough offices will be closed Monday, September 4th in observance of the Labor Day holiday. And Hatfield Borough Fall Festival is scheduled for September 23rd, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. on East Lincoln Avenue. And I hear we have a lot of cars registered, so looks like it's going to be a great event.
Any questions on the announcements? All right, if not, we'll go to item number 7, reports from standing committees. We'll start with Budget, Finance, and Labor Committee report. We have not met since our last session, so there's nothing really to report on. Building, Planning, and Zoning.
The committee met recently to discuss topics for our strategic planning meeting, and like I'm sure most committees will be. And but other than that, I have nothing else to report.
Okay. How about Public Safety?
We met tonight before our council meeting, and we were going over some traffic studies that we're going to be putting into place.
Okay. If I can make a recommendation, or not recommendation, but just a question.
Sure.
The monitoring device on Vine Street.
We talked about that.
Okay.
It's up to 19 is green. You go
Okay.
over that, then it's red and it's blinking.
Okay,
Slow down.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going 24 and it's 25. It's telling me I'm going 24, but it's red and blinking. I'm like, wait a minute, is this working correctly? So okay.
Yeah,
all right.
it's anything under 19 and under is green. Anything above that is red.
Oh,
down.
Okay.
Let's flip there.
Yeah. Which, I mean, is 1 mile per hour below the limit, right? Or am I missing something here?
No, I tested that out. I saw how low you could go until it went green.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I saw something on YouTube or something the other day where they put those up and people are running to see how
Yeah.
fast they are. You see that?
Yes.
That's pretty funny.
Lieutenant brought that up before. There was kids on Blaine that were running to see how fast they were going.
Okay. Get some track kids out from North Penn and see, But okay. All right. So I wasn't imagining things and losing my mind. All right.
No.
So my wife might disagree with that statement, but all right. How about Public Works and Property Equipment?
We have not met since the last meeting, so I do not have.
Okay. How about Utilities, Rich?
We have not met either, and I have nothing to report at this time.
Hurok?
Brock met recently, and one of the highlights was the movie in the park. From what I understand, it was actually a big success, despite the impending bad weather that sort of showed up unexpectedly. Also, the Communications Committee has become a subcommittee of HAROC, and we have started working on reviewing the various methods and controls that other municipalities have in place that we may be able to institute here within the borough. So that's now started rolling. And one other thing, if you're not aware, we are losing another member of the HAROC committee. Johnny Costanza will be moving out of the borough in the next few weeks. So we will once again be looking for another member to replace him. Seems like we can't hold on to anybody. That's all I have at that point.
Any questions? Madam Mayor?
Well, the only thing I have is, at our next meeting on the 20th of September, we're going to have the manager of the, Montgomery County, Voter Services giving a short presentation
Okay.
about, just information about election.
Okay. All right, if no questions, we'll go on to item 8, reports and correspondence, monthly investment report.
So since we are meeting prior to September 1st, a bunch of reports I would say are not in your packet this evening. If they're not in your packet, they will be at the September 20th meeting. So included in that is the monthly investment report, which was not in your packets this evening.
Okay. EITLST?
EITLST was included in your packets this evening. Year-to-date total is $347,852, which is a gain of 15,800 over than what we were this year-to-date in 2022. So even though August was down compared to August in 2022, we're still up over $15,000 for the year from where we were last year. And we had talked about it previously many times, but Budget, Finance, and Labor will be looking at that as a revenue source and adjusting our numbers moving into 2024. For LST, we're looking at the exact same 43,215 year to date, up from the 36 in 2022. That's a gain of 6,500. So again, though August looks like it's down 2,000 year to date, still ahead of where we were in 2022.
All right, monthly zoning and hearing.
We do not have any monthly zoning hearing board applications. I don't want to speak for the Planning, Building, and Zoning Committee, but we did discuss the 103 North Main Street application, and the committee has decided, and Larry and Michelle can add in that we're going to let that application sit as is. They are not looking for an appeal at this time. And we have not heard on the homeowners end where they're going, if they put in an appeal or not. We have not seen anything in the borough.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I should bring that up at a public meeting or wait till
Yeah.
the session under legal. But thank you.
I think
Doesn't
since,
matter.
yeah, I thought because we talked about it last time and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, it should be okay.
How about the police department report? Yeah, Jay?
Nothing more to add, except we'll be joining the consortium testing next month. And then the physical agility portion of it is in October, and we're looking to hire hopefully 2. And Officer Michael Hardage, after 25 years, will be retiring in November.
All right, fire department?
There was no fire department report included in your packets, but if you have any specific questions, Butch is present in the audience and can address any.
He's been quietly sitting back there all night, so.
Yeah.
True.
And we're about a week ahead of our usual release.
Yeah.
It's because we're meeting before the 1st, because we're going to PMEA. So it kind of upsets the reports, how they come in. It's hard.
I was told it's all my fault.
Yes. All right, EMS?
There was no official report in your packets tonight, but as everybody said, I think that was a really informative presentation from BMSC and Budget, Finance, and Labor. That is a discussion that's on for strategic planning as well. We will talk about funding moving forward into 2024, if that's an option for the borough, and in the years to come. So that's going to be a discussion item at Budget, Finance, and Labor and at the strategic planning meeting.
Public Works? You're on, Steve.
I'm scared of this microphone. Very touchy.
The first thing is,
Standard month of Public Works, we did have one minor power outage, affected like, what was it, like 6 properties on Market Street. Everything was restored in under 2 hours, so. And I did have a couple pictures of the completed weir wall for the MS4 program for the Heritage Park retention basin. So that was installed. I checked on it today. Everything is working as it's supposed to be.
Now, that didn't interfere with our longstanding resident, Mr. Turtle, that lives in there, right?
I don't know if it's the same one, but I can say I was at the park with my kids on Monday night, and I saw him crossing over to the pond,
Okay.
assuming it's the same turtle. They don't wear name tags, so I don't know.
Yeah. Did we ever initiate the naming and all that for?
That Lindsay and I have been talking about
Okay.
it and doing some type of social media campaign with that and like kind of like safety tips for snapping turtle type of thing. Yeah, so Lindsay and I have talked about it a lot and are
All right.
working on something.
Okay, all right. All right, how about our engineering report?
There was no engineering report included in your packets this evening.
Zoning office building,
The zoning officer report was included in your packets. As you can see, this report is a work in progress that Katie and I have been working with Bob. Notice of violations, trying to get a little bit more detail without giving specific addresses, just general streets and areas where those violations have been issued.
The ones towards the end, the Lincoln Avenue, is that, I'm pretty sure I know that address. Has more junk been brought there, or is that from before? Is new trucks and new,
Yes, these are, I know the property you're referring to. These are separate from that. These are new that a resident on the below portion of West Lincoln, he submitted a map to myself and the code department of vehicles that he's seen in the area. So myself, Steve has the map, and Bob. So it was a little bit down farther, but no, there's no new vehicles at the location you're talking about.
fire marshal?
Fire marshal, fire safety inspection report was in your packets. This is the same one I believe that we had seen from the meeting 2 weeks ago. So, nothing new to update on this, just that Bob and the gentleman, Dan, who's doing the fire safety inspections, they're just trying to keep a sheet or a running total of what's been done and what still has to be inspected.
Have they kind of mapped out a plan or mapped out the dates and timing to get everything done?
Yes,
you?
yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
He believes that everything will be completed for the year to date 2023 in this year. He actually shares a spreadsheet with like Katie on the computer of who passed, who failed,
Okay.
and when the reinspection is, and everything he said should be completed for 2023 in the year 2023. So we're actually from COVID caught
Caught
up
up,
this
yep.
year. You may have noticed that their bills are a little bit higher. We've talked about that. Just because we wanted to get caught up. So this year we should be 100% caught up, and then we can see how we want to move forward with that. If we want to go back to every other year, or we want to continue to do fire safety inspections every year, because we collect fees for them every year. So that can be a discussion as well during budget season.
All right, pool advisor.
There was no pool advisory report in your packet this evening.
Well, and I actually have good news. So the next time the pool advisory council is looking for a member, I don't know his wife's name, but the gentleman by the name of John Tate, who lives on Main Street, his
Yep.
wife is interested in being on the pool advisory board.
Yes,
So-
we talked to her during the zoning hearing. She came up, and I did ask Caitlin Farrell today, I know she attends, what other members attend and how frequently they attend. And I know that one of the members, their term is done at the end of 2023. So I plan on reaching out. Are you still interested? And for other members that may not be attending, we can talk about some type of, I don't know if there can be a requirement or something that you need to attend X amount of meetings to be able to continue to be on the board, because there actually are people interested in serving on the board, which is great. I
Yes,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, awesome.
But if you tell them that they can't make it because of work or something like that, then maybe they'd feel okay resign. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, okay. At least you guys won't be putting more pressure on my wife.
Yeah,
to do
she's off
that.
the list.
She's off the list now,
Yeah.
yes. All right, if there's no questions, we'll go on to item number 9, the manager's report.
Since last meeting, not many updates in my manager's report. Really, the only dates were the August newsletter for PMEA, and Steve and I will be attending that conference. We'll be leaving Tuesday and coming back Friday, so we'll be out of the office next week. Diane is actually attending the conference as well on Wednesday. They have a finance workshop that's going to discuss ACH payments, which could be something possible for the borough in the future. It talks about fund transfers, because as you know, we transfer funds from our electric to supplement our general. So it's a really good financial workshop. I asked her if she was interested. She's going to be attending on Wednesday as well. So she will be out of the office. And then the public information officer update was in this packet. It was not included in the August meeting. So we did include that in here. And we just sent the newsletter to print today. So that should come out before Fall Fest. And it is highlighting Fall Fest. It's highlighting a really good Now and Then article, like I had mentioned before, about the Hatfield Auto Museum and Colb's Garage. I think it's a really great addition.
Any questions for the manager? If not, we'll go on to item 10, new business. So item A, Montgomery County Consortium Committees, rock salt bid results for 23-24.
Hatfield Borough is the host municipality on behalf of the Montgomery County Consortium of Communities for rock salt. I think this is our third year that we have been hosting. On August 23rd, 3 bids were received for this salt bid, and the low bidder was Morton Salt, which was a bid of $64.84 per delivered ton and $64.50 per non-delivered ton. And this was actually a decrease from last year of $3.16, and it's on for consideration as an action item this evening.
And remind me, what's the difference between delivered versus non-delivered?
So nobody does non-delivered because you have to go pick it up, and I think they're from like Missouri or where is Morton Salt?
You can go and pick it up at their, at the ports in, like,
Delaware.
along the Delaware.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But it's, that would be like us sending our trucks
Right,
down there
right,
to
okay.
pick up
Yeah.
salt. It,
Doesn't make any
for,
sense.
for the price difference, it makes 0 sense to do that.
People in Delaware might be okay. But...
Right, right.
So, okay. I apologize. I couldn't remember that. So, okay. All right. Yeah. Any questions? All right, item B, defined benefit plans for 2024, minimum municipal obligation. Sorry.
This is the financial requirement for the MMO for the obligation for the budget for 2024. As you can see, we are estimated at $84,158. If you remember last year, our obligation was only $36,599, so it's a significant increase. Diane and I called and asked about that. Why are we seeing such high numbers? They're telling us it's really the market losses in 2022 that's affecting that. It's affecting the amortization schedule. This is just an estimate. They will do an audit to see what our actual cost is going to be. But they said we lost around 15 to 20%, which was 17% down in the amortization schedule due to the market in 2022. So that's one reason why it's going up to 84. Another reason is, as you know, we adopted the new handbook and it's part of the union contract that the defined benefit is sunsetting at the end of this year. So we could see an increase this year and see a possible significant decrease next year. It just depends how the audit works out in the numbers. So this is on for consideration as an action item, as we have to have it completed by the end of September. And that's for the defined benefit.
But it's not gonna go away because you have people who can earn a defined benefit.
Correct, it stays.
Right.
Yes, nobody can jump in.
They can't get any more, but,
Yes.
right,
Yeah.
so we'll have that obligation till everybody who's entitled is gone.
Yeah, currently it's, it affects these outside of Public Works, 2 employees in the borough office.
So basically, that's the liability, the potential liability that we're going to have for when these people retire.
Yeah, and it ends up being good for the borough in a sense that we will know what that payment is. So, because at sunsets, it's based on your last 3 years of employment and your years of service with the municipality. So we will be able to tell, based
Before
on
the sunset.
yes, before the sunset, what our obligation is going to be years out, because it cannot increase. That, like, for
Right.
example, if some employee gets it, it's based on their last 3 years of service, their years of service for the borough. So that number's not going to change, though their payroll and their salary will hopefully increase over the next several years.
Don't press your luck.
Yeah.
Not if VMSC has anything to say about it. So they're like, we need to know. So. Okay. Resolution 2023-12 recognizing Public Power Week.
So I'll go back to see to the defined contribution pension plan municipal obligation. So this is for the defined, this is for the contribution where employees are matched at 4% or 6%. In 2023, we were paying 23,600, as you can see, estimated 30,100. The reason it's increased is because the payroll is higher, and that's what it's based off of. And also because employees are now going to be matched at 4% and not 6% per the union, or at 4% and not 3% per the union contract. So that goes up, so that creates a little increase as well. And that's on for consideration as an action item. Again, just as the defined benefit, it has to be completed by the end of September.
Sorry about that, didn't mean to skip over. All right, now we'll go to item D, recognizing public power.
This is the annual resolution that we adopt recognizing Public Power Week. Public Power Week is October 1st through the 7th for 2023. And this is going to be on for consideration at the regular meeting in September.
Item E, resolution 2023-13, recognizing Fire Prevention Week.
This is the annual resolution that we recognize Fire Prevention Week. This year it's October 8th through the 14th. I have had communications during the Public Safety Committee meeting that the firehouse is looking to having an open house. This is on for consideration at the September regular meeting. So if this is adopted, hopefully we can present the resolution to the fire company during their open house in October.
Yep. Item F, resolution 2023-14, closure of the main borough roads, certain borough roads.
This is a resolution authorizing the closure of East Lincoln Avenue in the borough for the Fall Festival and Car Show on September 23rd. This will be on for consideration as an action item at the September meeting.
Any questions on any of those? And if not, we'll go to item 11. Any old business? I don't think so.
I don't have any.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing, we'll get to the action part of our meeting tonight. So item 12, we'll start with A, motion to consider awarding the Montgomery County Consortium of Committees, MCCC, 2023 through 2024 rock salt bid to Morton Salt Inc. in the amount of $64.50 per non-delivered ton and $64.84 sorry, per delivered ton.
So moved.
Second.
I get a motion from Councilman Stevens, a second from Councilwoman Cresser. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. Please forgive me, I'm still a little dealing with lack of sleep.
Just make sure the minutes reflect.
Yeah, it's the right number. So otherwise, those guys would be going, hey, we got a big pay increase.
Right, we got a big increase. Woo.
All right, we'll go to item B, motion to consider the defined benefit pension plan 2024 minimum municipal obligation in the amount of $84,158.
So moved. Second.
I get a motion from Councilman Fagan, a second from Councilman Gerard. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. Motion passes. Item C, motion to consider the defined contribution pension plan for 2024 minimum municipal obligation in the amount of $30,100.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilman Gerard, a second from Councilman Fagan. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? There are none. Motion passes. All right, we are going to have an executive session. So can I get a motion to adjourn for that executive session?
So moved.
Second.
I get a motion from Councilwoman Cresser, a second from Councilman Gerard. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, opposed? There are none. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you much.